Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the CyberGizmo, I'm going to be taking a look at the new Proxmox 6.2 right after this. So I'm just going to jump in here. What I did was I went out to the Proxmox website and downloaded the latest ISO. I then burned it to a SD card, and I'm getting ready right now to boot this up on hardware. So I'm going to actually be installing this on my NUC 10 today. I was going to do XCP-NG, but XCP-NG is still based on an old kernel, and it will not support the NUC 10, but Proxmox will. So that's what we'll do today, is we'll start with that, and maybe if XCP-NG ever comes out with a 5.x kernel, I'll be able to actually run this on my box. So I'm going to just select the SD card. And it comes up with, I'm going to have to install it. I'm waiting for it to boot up. And the first thing it asks you to do is to agree to the EULA. So I will do that. Otherwise, we probably won't get too much further with this. So the first question it asks is, I know this is kind of hard to read, but it's asking me to select the hard drive that I want to install this on. So I'm going to select my external drive to put this on today. And we'll go ahead and click next. And now it's asking me about the country. I'm in the US. I need to select my time zone, which was Chicago's close enough, I guess. And then my keyboard will be English, and that's all I need there. I'll need to have a passphrase for, this is for the root account. And then I have to supply this with a valid email address, but I'm not going to do that today. Oh, okay. So it really wants one. So I guess we'll just give it. And okay. The next thing it wants to know is what do I want to call this? Well, I'm going to call this Zen 0. And my IP address for this, I'm going to put in a static one. And looks like it's already found the router, and the DNS server is fine as well. So that looks good. Now it gives me a recap. It's saying it's going to put this on an ext4 file system. My time zone is Chicago. Keyboard is US. Email is local. And I have 5.2, 5.24. Okay, so all that is good. So we can go ahead and start the install. And I will be back. This will take a bit. And I'll let you know how long this takes. It is about 11:56 a.m. Okay, so this is done, and it took about 2 minutes, maybe 3. Yeah, maybe 3 minutes, all in all. And it's sitting at this right now, and you'll want to pay attention to this, because this is the web address that you'll want to use to actually log into the GUI. It is a web GUI, and to configure the system from there. One thing I should tell you about Proxmox is several things. First of all, before we reboot this, it is Debian Buster 10 based. It is a type 1 KVM, which means that there's a small operating system that runs, it's the hypervisor that runs directly on the hardware, and the virtual machines are in turn installed on top of that hypervisor. The hypervisor that Proxmox uses is the same as Gnome Box's and Virt Manager. It uses KVM. So that makes this very transportable if I want to create virtual machines in Boxes, for example, or Virt Manager. I can easily transfer those to Proxmox. So that's one of the nice things about this. So we'll go ahead and reboot this. And I'm going to pull the SD card out of the slot. And it should just boot up all by itself. Shouldn't have to do anything special to get it to come up. This is a grub screen. Go ahead and start her up. I know this is hard to read. Basically, at this point, you'll get a login window, and that's all we really need from this. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to a full screen over on this side, because we're really done with that's all there is to the Proxmox install. And I'll go over to Firefox, and what we will do is we will attempt. Oops. Let me just switch keyboards here. Now this needs to be HTTPS. Okay, and of course now this won't work in Chrome because you can't do this in Chrome, but it will work in Firefox. Go ahead and accept. This is a self-signed certificate. You can get Let's Encrypt certs for this, and it does understand them. So we'll go ahead and we'll log in. And right away you get this information about you don't have a valid subscription for this. Proxmox is free and open source, and they do have an open source version of this. But you cannot use the enterprise libraries unless you have a subscription. So there are instructions in the manual for setting this up, so that if you want to be able to go out, and get rid of this nag, you can do that. But for now, we don't really care about that too much. So let's take a look and see kind of how this is set up here. And I think what I'll do is try to make this a little bit bigger for you. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier for you to see. So the first thing it comes into is you'll notice across the top here is it tells you the version number. It's 6.2-4. And there's a search term here, and also you have online documentation. You can create VMs, or you can create containers. Now these are LXD containers. So I did a brief video about those, and if you want to refresh your memory with those, Proxmox does both virtual machines and LXD containers. And then of course this is your login. If you want, there's a couple of things here that you might want to look at. There's the settings menu in which you can go in and configure the look and feel of the GUI if you want. And you can also, you'll get kind of a recap, some information about the storage pools that are available to you. Now, the summary will show you kind of the status of what's going on with the machine. So we have a standalone machine. You can cluster these together with other Proxmox nodes. So you can, that allows you to move information between them. And then, of course, here's your LXC containers as well. Then it gives you some information about the storage and the amount of resources that you have consumed on the CPU and memory and so forth. And then of course, we don't have that. And so if you wanted to set up, you can create one or you can join one. So I'm not going to cover that today. It also handles Ceph, but you have to install it in order for Ceph to become your storage pools. Now Ceph can become both a VM storage pool as well as it can be a data pool as well. So you can do both with Ceph. Options allows you to set up, some of your configurations for the hardware environment, and then these will be your storage pools that you have selected. And these two were created for us automatically. You'll notice that there's some things here about, so local LVM has disk image and containers. So that means that local LVM can contain virtual machine, virtual drives, and also the virtual machine description itself, as well as Lexi containers. And this one up here, the local, can contain backups and dumps and ISO images and containers. There's probably all kinds of things here. We can go into edit and actually see what all is listed here. So yeah, we have ISO, container, ISO dump, and you can add on to that if you want. But for right now, we're just going to turn that off. We don't really care about that so much. But let's just go down here and you can set up your backups. If you're sending replication between, you have to have two nodes. This is a node, so you have to have two nodes at least to configure a replication. Your permissions, your users, API tokens, if you want to use those. There are your groups, there's your pools, your roles. And then down here is where you would actually add your methods for authentication. And Proxmox does support Active Directory and LDAP, so you can go either way, or PAM, of course. This is a high availability option. These are your counts, and it has a firewall, and you can set up your options for that. And then, your support. So I guess the first thing we need to do here is we need to set up some storage. This is fine for right now for what I need, but I need a way to be able to get ISOs loaded. And on a type 1 hypervisor, I would have to set up some local areas on the system in order to do that. So this is somewhat cumbersome, but what we're going to do, so what I want to do here is I'm going to SSH into the box's root, and I am Zen 0. Okay, so I want to go over here to opt, and I want to create an ISO directory. Okay, and then I'm just going to sit here for a moment, and what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is create a local pool, and you can give this anything you want. I'll just call this local ISO, and we're going to say it's this. We're going to give it disk image. Well, do I want disk images there? No. I just want ISO images. I might do container templates here as well, just in case I have something, a future container template that I need, that I can then create my VMs from that. So I'll go ahead and add that. I also, let's just say, okay, so that's my local one. Let's go back over here for just a second so you can see what this did. So it created a directory called template, and in template is ISO. So I want to go to, I need to get some ISOs to load in here, so I'm going to go do that. I think I'll go to my NAS directory. I also have a template here. I'll go ahead and load this in. This is the server ISO, so we'll store that here as well. Okay, so I got that one, and that's all I need for this. So that should be stored there, and it is. Make it read-only just in case it needs to have that. The other thing I want to do is I want to also map a NFS drive. Now I have an NFS server on my, on Blue Ice also has an NFS server, so I think that's right. And this should show up. Well, if I put that in right. Yeah. So that should be all right. Okay. So it takes it a few minutes to find it, and I want that as well. Okay, and the other one I can add is, since I have a Gluster pool, I can attach that as well. So let's see, we'll say this is Gluster ISO, and this is on API, and the volume is rep1 SSD, and we'll also do ISO images here as well. So I now have Gluster, I now have a local directory, and I also have an NFS. So I've got quite a few options here for where I can pull my ISOs from. So I guess the first thing we want to do here is we want to actually create a VM. So the first thing it comes up with is this, and so I obviously want to give it a name. So let's start with Fedora. And yeah, that's fine. And then it should be, well, I guess I don't have a Fedora image over there. So let me put one over there. I'm sure I have one in here. No, really? It's probably capital F, right? Yeah, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to SFTP to, well, actually, I don't have to do that because that'll take a little bit to copy. While we're waiting on that, okay, so that's done, and now I should have 3 here, and so we'll go ahead. Now it'll take a little bit of time sometimes for this to refresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'll force it to refresh, I hope. Nope, it hasn't refreshed yet. So let's see. Let's go to local, and then we'll come back to it. And that should force it to refresh. There we go. So I want to install the Fedora one, and I'm mounting this on the CD-ROM that is virtualized. And so we will just go ahead. And this is all fine. The VirtIO SCSI is fine. You can choose whatever you want here. There's a number of ones that you can use. And then we'll go ahead and continue on. This looks good, but I'm going to make this a 23 gigabyte drive. And we'll give it 2 cores, and then we'll go on to memory. And we'll make this 4096. You can set up, if you've got multiple network cards, this machine doesn't, but you can set up what bridges you want to use for the machine to actually communicate on. You can also set up VLANs if you want as well. So it just gives you a chance here to review everything, make sure that you're all happy with it, and if you are, you can go ahead and set it up. Now, those show up right here. So right now it's still, I think it's in the middle of, yeah, it was creating it. That was the lock key, and now it's ready to go. So you'll notice you get a couple more options here. This is start, shutdown, this is console, and then there's some other things here, like you can clone it to a template, whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and start this, but you'll notice I can't really see what's going on. I can see it coming up, but in order to see it, you have to actually hit the console window. And this is no VNC. You have a number of options with the console. You can use Spice or Xterm JS if you want to do that. Let me get back to no VNC, and we'll go ahead and start this up. This will be the same as installing on any VM or any system. I don't need to do that check, so I'm just going to go ahead and let it run. Okay, and so we're up, and I'm going to go ahead and install Fedora. I think what I might do here is adjust my screen size a bit so that I can see what's going on. So I think I'm going to make this a little bit smaller window. Let's do this. That's the minimum, I think, for Fedora. There we go. Because I need to get access to these buttons down here. When we actually get into the full, because I've got this extra junk up here, it's going to make that a little bit difficult. So I'll go ahead and accept the defaults for this. It'll check the configuration of the storage, of course, and then it'll allow me to begin the installation. So I'll be back. This will take a while, too. It's 12:19 p.m. right now. One thing I was going to mention while we're waiting on this is that you don't have to wait for this. If you have more than one VM that you're going to create, you don't have to wait for those to complete. That's the nice thing about this type of a hypervisor is I'm going to go ahead and create a Ubuntu server. And we'll go ahead and do that. Instead of using that one, though, I'm going to use the NFS one. And there it is. Same thing, go across, hard drive. We don't need quite that much. And so we'll go ahead and do that. CPUs, we'll do 2. We'll do, that's probably enough for the server. You don't need a lot of memory for the servers. And then we'll go ahead and confirm that. And it's locked while it's creating. Your status down here tells you what's going on, and it says, okay, it's done. So at this point, I can then go ahead and start that one up, open a console window as well. So I now have 2 console windows up here. One for the Fedora install and one for Ubuntu. So you don't have to wait. If you're impatient, you can just go ahead and do all of it at once. So I have to wait now until this comes up. Now, of course, if you're going against the same pool, which I am, it's going to be a little slower because it is writing to the same media. So, yeah. But that's the advantage of hypervisors like this, is you can create multiple pools to store your images on. And so, yeah, you could have this go into a ZFS RAID if you want. Or to any type of iSCSI target as well. All right, so we'll go ahead and get this going. This has a bit of the same problem, but I think I can, yeah. Well, maybe I should move my... Let me move it to the left for now. There. Now I can actually see what's going on. All right, so that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Use the entire disk. That's fine. That's fine. Go ahead and confirm it. And we'll call this UB7, I guess. Yeah, we want that. Okay, so that one's going on at the same time. I'll go ahead and come back to this. It's still installing. So I'll be back when this is both done. Yeah, you can, as much resources as you have available, you can go ahead and let it do whatever it wants. I'll be back. So Fedora is done, and according to my clock, it is 12:26. So yeah, it slowed it down a little bit. But one of the things I want to tell you is that being able to do multiple VMs at a time is not a selling point for Proxmox, or for virtualization type 1 hypervisors either. So, I mean, you can do this even on any of the virtualization systems that you have. And in fact, if you were running Vagrant, and when you're going through the list of machines to set up, it can do everything synchronously, or it can do everything asynchronously. So, your choice. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and finish up this installation here, and then I am going to power off. And what I will do is eject the drive that I am booting from, the ISO image that I'm booting from. So that's done. We can go ahead and close that up, and I'm going to close this up as well. Come back over here, and you'll notice Fedora is down. Now, how do I eject the CD-ROM? Well, it's right here, and I can highlight that entry and do an edit, and say don't use any media. And now I can boot that back up, open my console window. And this one is done as well, so we'll go ahead and reboot it. Now in this case, it's stop and pausing for me to do something, so I will go back. I'm going to put this over here for now. We'll go to UB server, and we can do the same thing. Go down here, edit it, and take the media out, and then go back over here and press enter. So while the Ubuntu server is coming up, I can go ahead and work on this. So I'll do that. Set up my user account. Oh, I don't know. I guess that one is fine. Give it a password. All done. Wait for the screen to come up. Okay. So Fedora's done. This one should be done as well. Yep. So that's done there, and that's this is headless. So I don't need that anymore. I can get rid of that, and of course then I can run off of this as up I want to. The problem with no BNC is I mean obviously I have to log into the console of Proxmox to use that, but I can load additional utilities like Spice or whatever to be able to do the GUI management remotely. So, yeah, I mean, that's not a real big deal. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. And then I can watch my state over here. The green arrows means it's running, and it even tells you that if you hover over it. So we'll watch this one come down. And normally then you would do the same kinds of things that I would always do, is do the update, do the hardening and all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, that's all you need to do there. Also, well, we'll just wait here. Don't save. So that's down now. This one, I can just go ahead and I can crash it if I wanted to. On the shutdown, you can just say stop. Now, that is a crash. It's like pulling the power plug, right? So not probably the best way to do it. The best way to do this would be to actually go back into the console window. And then just shut it down gracefully. Yeah. So probably probably what I'll do in the future is there's a way to set up backups in this, and there's a way to you can actually export your virtual machines. So yeah, we'll probably go back through that at some point and talk about that. So yeah, you can also remove these. You can convert it, you can clone it, and all this kind of good stuff. So there's very good documentation that's both online here, and also you can download a PDF if you want to keep a version of the manual on your system. It'll go through step by step on how to set it up, probably more than I can do today. But anyway, that's pretty much the only thing I wanted to show you. I don't want to close the entire environment, no. So yeah, and then when you're all done with the GUI, you can just log out. And then clean up whatever you have left. So let me, Proxmox I've used over the years. You know, there was a problem way back, I think, with Gluster where the versions that I had were incompatible with the version that is installed on Proxmox. And it's, I think, 5.3 on Proxmox, and I'm running for the server 7.5. Those will work together, so not a big deal there. You can use the latest versions of Gluster to do that. So yeah, I mean, as far as what Proxmox does, it's very good, and I like the fact that, of course, that it supports hardware. Now, the thing is, you know, don't get put off by the fact that they're asking for a subscription. I mean, that is a support mechanism for which you can get updates, but you can install the free version. And in fact, if we go out to the website here, if I can find it, there's a pricing. There's a pricing guide that shows the, let's see, get subscription. I think that might be it. So yeah, so you have you have a premium edition, which is pretty expensive. I mean, if you're a corporate, yeah, it's probably nothing to you, because if you're looking at what Zen and what VMware charges for a socket, it's a lot less. And then there's a community edition. There used to be a free edition. And so I don't know where that went, but again, they're in the documentation. It shows you how to cut this over to the free edition. I'm not going to go through that with you today, but there used to be a quote free version of this, but I don't see that right now. And maybe they have done away with that. But I know that if you go to the documentation, it will walk you through. Let's see. Let's go to downloads. Let's see. We'll go there. And we'll open it with Doc Viewer. So let's see. It's probably one of the very first things it has you do. Do. There it is. No subscription. So yeah, they still do support this. So don't get all worried the fact that you're going to have to pay a subscription. I mean, if you need support and you need help and you want somebody to be able to talk to you about a problem that you're having with the software, yeah, it's always good to do that. You can't, I'm sure that if you're selecting the no subscription support, they're probably not going to be too helpful. You might find support on the forums and so forth, but I don't think they would be too helpful to you. But anyway, that's the only thing I had today. Hope you enjoyed this, and as always, hope to see you all again real soon, and bye for now.